Hello, this is Diego. I'd like to just briefly summarize. Um, I saw an anime and I think I learned a lot of stuff that I never really, questions I haven't really asked are being answered. I learned a lot about feminism, I learned a lot about gender identity, and I learned about the greatest strengths of humanity. And I never asked these questions, but I see them in the anime, and it's definitely now one of my top three favorite movies slash anime. And this is I'm gonna summarize what I draw out of it, and I don't know how to explain. Um, if you've seen my previous video on society being broken due to apathy, unaccountability, and polarization, this is kind of gonna build on that. Um, and kind of explain how like revolts and societal change are always subverted by people who lust for power. So, not always, but usually. Um, and this is because of what motivates us to do things. So, from my perspective, um, for the sake of this video, let's just use a reductionist perspective because that's where I'm coming from. So it'll be easier to understand what I'm saying if you just use a reductionist perspective, which is basically um, we're composed of atoms, we're composed of inanimate matter, and our consciousness is I for now I'll it doesn't matter. We it's too hard to agree on a definition for consciousness. So we'll just say for the context of the video let's just say if you're a human, then you have consciousness. So our greatest strengths are what motivate us to do stuff. But I see that you know how the English languages have like nouns, adjectives, pronouns. I don't even know what those mean, but there's like descriptors. Like if I'm happy, it's me that is happy. The happiness acts on me. If um if I am if I'm hungry, it is I am experiencing hunger, right? Um, if I am if I'm faithful, it's like I am experiencing faith towards another noun, another person or thing. So, so these are vectors we form, right? It's a vector. So I am acting on this is just my syntax for how I'm trying to relate my thoughts to you. Okay, I am acting on faith, which is acting on my object of worship or my veganism or my belief that what I'm saying is true. Okay? So, whatever I said earlier, I am, or it is like, it is a vector. I don't remember what I said, but like, if I'm feeling something, like, I'm acting on that feeling, which is acting on me. So it's kind of, what do you call it? I don't know. Like the yin and the yang. Anyways, never mind. Um, the everything has a vector that it acts on every. So from that perspective, with emotions having a subject that is experiencing the emotion and a subject that emotion act or that emotion is targeted towards, that's how I'm conveying my thoughts. So humanity's greatest strengths, I would say, are devotion, possessiveness, and there's one more which usually everyone forgets. So, um, should I go from a sexual perspective or from a like analytical perspective or just like from a general emotions perspective? From a general emotions perspective, if you're devoted towards a cause or towards a person, you can even do anything for them. Um, if you are feeling possessive towards a thing or a possession or a person, you will try to keep that possession. It is yours. It belongs to you. You want that possession to be yours. You want to 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 control it, to own it, um, and you will fight for that. Even aggressively, people can get aggressive to protect what is theirs, whether it's property or people. Un- Unfortunately, so that doesn't sound very feminist, but I wish I could. I don't know how to. I'm not the one to explain feminism, so I'll I'll have to talk about feminism later when I understand it because I don't, and I don't think most people do, because it's not about gender equality. There's way more than two genders. So I mean, how can I say this? Damn. For someone who places, I place value in dominant and submissive roles. So if two people are both submissive, then they can have equality. If two people are both dominant, they can reach equality. But when there is a submissive and a dominant, regardless of which one is which, then it's then you would want a leader-follower relation. Well, in any mutual relationship, you'd want a leader-follower uh, roles, um, and that's why you need equality. Or or no, it's the two. Sorry, that's not why you need equality. Equality is just uh, equality is just like for the mutual benefit of everyone because everyone wants to be valued, and so if you don't respect others, then you're not going to receive their respect. So I think that is the basis of equality, but in a relationship, equality allows better synergy, better cooperation. And so if there's going to be a leader follower dynamic, then if both people are submissive or both people are dominant, then they need to view each other as equals. Now, when there's a submissive and a dominant, it is it is it is fine to have those roles if that is what is uplifting. And so this is where devotion and possessiveness can be motivators. Now that's an analogy to the general. That's a not an anecdote. That's an anecdote to the general concept of being motivated for a cause, being devoted to a cause, protecting a belief, protecting a person. People will fight and die for them. One of the Caesars once said it's so easy to find like 1,000 men who will die for a cause, but hard to find one who will. I don't remember the rest of the quote. Um, So we'll get all motivated to fight for something, but uh, we're also pretty stupid, and it's pretty easy to manipulate humans. So that needs to be addressed. I will talk about that. Then there's possessiveness. Possessiveness is like the dominant role in a relationship. Um, you are commanding someone's devotion, or you are so but possessiveness also synergizes with selfishness. So if you want to possess something, if you want to own something, if you want to obtain something, if you believe that something is yours, or even if it's an idea and you believe that other people cannot take an idea or an opinion or a faith away from you, if that is the foundation, a foundation of your identity, your self identity, then um, it is something that is yours, um, regardless of whether it stands up to reality. And so there's a lot of benefits to capitalism in that it allows us to actually have possessions, which is a very good thing, I think. To own property, that's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful right to have to own property, to be able to barter through currency. Um, I'm not saying capitalism invented these, but it implemented these in an egalitarian fashion. Well, in theory, that's what it was supposed to do. Humans fucked it up. Um, long, long ago, and now it's just on the decaying spiral of never-ending inflation until the next uh, societal collapse. And then, of course, there'll be the revolutions and the civil war and probably the people who fight for their beliefs will be subverted by people who fight for their hunger for power. And someone said power corrupts absolutely. And I'm not sure if that's true, but I think for me it's true. Because the opposite to being corrupted by power is the shame of feeling that peer pressure from your friends and knowing that if you do the right thing, then you're doing the wrong thing according to them. Because they're going to tell you you fucked up. They're going to tell you you can't do that because your friends are going to have their interests at heart. So if you go and say, I'm going to do this so these people won't get fucked over a year from now, your friends might say, you can't do that because it's a bad idea. And when you question on them and you find out, well, oh, it's because they're in it for themselves, or they want to make a quick buck, or that's going to mess with their social hierarchy, then you'll depart from that. Either you'll depart from that part where you're friends for mutual benefit, or you protect some rando, and in a year from now, he's protected. But that's not how you get votes. You get votes by being friends with everybody. You get votes. You get power by cooperating with people, and you rise through the ranks of social ladders, of social hierarchies, career ladders, political ladders. You rise through the ranks by either stepping on others or sucking up to those in power. Um, that's just the way the game is played in virtually, okay, I'm going to say in every large company. In every large company, in every large government, like if there's a company or a government that's like bigger than one city, then you play the game, by stepping on others or by sucking up to those in power. That's how you rise. That's how you gain power. That's how you fulfill your ambitions and your lust for power, and you gain the ability to dominate others, to exert your control, to tell others what to do. And we tell ourselves, if I sacrifice these people here for my power, then I can achieve great things for others, and in the long term, it'll pay off because I'm helping others. And that's why power corrupts absolutely, because we skew our vision of morality towards ourselves our loved ones, our family, our friends, and our species. And maybe if you're a politician, your voters and your allies. But the people who aren't into that corrupt shit, because that is what corruption is the people who reject the lesser evil. But those people are crippled because they can't cooperate. They don't have the social skills to cooperate. If you always reject the lesser evil, how are you going to cooperate with other people if you view their ideas as evil, regardless of whether they not or not they are? If you cannot cooperate with evil people, how will you get your policies passed? How will you achieve what you want to do? And so people sacrifice their inferiors to pass the stuff they want passed. Screw over the masses to protect the minority. Jimmy Dore said an interesting thing today or yesterday. He was like, well, if you don't like it, go buy your own politicians. And even if you do have the mental fortitude to reject corruption, you need a lot of information to make educated, well-informed decisions. So how can you know for sure if those people are going to get screwed over? And aren't they mortal? Aren't they going to die anyways? Aren't they foreigners? Who will punish you if you bomb foreigners? What if they're of a different ethnicity? What if they worship a different god? Then are they really people? Do they even matter? They're going to die anyways. If you ask yourself those questions, without asking yourself the question, oh wait, that's a double standard, aren't I going to die anyways? Then it's not very egalitarian. It's rather hypocritical to use those self-justifications for dehumanizations of your prey, of the people you exploit, of the people you abuse. Because whenever you tell yourself, and this is one of humanity's greatest vices, whenever you tell yourself they're going to die anyways, by extension, and this is why we need to use that third strength, which I haven't talked about, we need to use that third strength and not be a hypocrite. We need to use that third strength, which is logic, and say, wait, I'm going to die anyways. So I can't use those arguments against others if I'm not going to use it against myself. Because if my life doesn't matter, then I can act as a true nihilist or an existentialist, which is based off nihilism in my opinion. But I can't act with selective nihilism to dehumanize people that I'm screwing over, because that's hypocritical, that's illogical, that's irrational, and it's a double standard. So, eh? Think about that. So we need some logic in our lives, and that is humanity's third strength, which is logic. And it's an acquired skill. We can learn it. Some people learn it faster than others. Some people are more devoted to logic than others. And some people only use logic when it pleases them, and use emotions when it is more practical. Because in the end, from our reductionist perspective of being composed of inanimate matter, with however you define consciousness being a construct of the brain, the nervous system, etc., the physical, um, then how do we get I don't know what my point was. How do we get higher to this realm of ideas and self-identity? How do we get from physical to self-identity if we're all fucking utility monsters who do everything for our own benefit to optimize our environment? If logic is a tool with which to optimize our environment, then how do we as utility monsters get past the problem of our inherent selfishness, um, because wouldn't that conflict with logic? Wouldn't that conflict with humanism? Um, and seeing ourselves as a inanimate utility monster, wouldn't that conflict with our ideal of, like, whatever you call it, self-realization, self-identity, our who we see ourselves as, our self-identity? Wouldn't that shatter our self-identity? And so we have to come up with our own answer. Whether you base it from the common ground of logic, whether you base it from the reality of nihilism and then choose and pick what you value in life, whether you experience loneliness and want companionship, or whether you go past nihilism to value others in a similar way that you value yourself. And you can even go all the way through, what is it, descriptive moral relativism, to use that as a tool to construct a model of objective morality where, if you say objective morality doesn't exist, how are you defining objective morality? Does love exist? How do you define love? So we can create a model of objective morality. However you define it, I can create a model of it mathematically. Everything in the universe can be reduced to mathematics, even God's will, because everything we see in the universe is reproducible. If you go back in time, cause and effect would say, if you could rewind time, if there was a universe completely identical to our own, it would carry out, the future would be completely identical to our own as well. Okay? In every physical and metaphysical aspect, if there was a universe completely identical to our own, the future would be the same. Now, that's not to say that we don't have free will, because fate and lacking free will are not interchangeable. And we can exhibit a parity of free will through our choices, right? Because we do have choices. We do have decision-making power. We do have more decision-making power than we can understand, and therefore we can just label that as free will, right? Because we don't have the processing power to understand all of our thoughts in real time and introspectively analyze all of our thoughts in real time. We don't understand how our consciousness operates, what its mechanisms are, how it functions, what drives it. Well, I'm trying to explain what drives it. And so we we label what drives it as free will. Um, so it's a very nebulous term. And you could say free will applies to animals, anything with a brain. And if you say free will applies to anything with a brain, then free will also applies to simulations of brains programmed into computers, whether they are simulated in real time or tick-based or at a slower pace or a faster pace. And isn't intelligence partially based off how fast you can process information, right? But what about emotional intelligence? And I'm learning a little bit of emotional intelligence. So I think with devotion, possessiveness, and logic, I think that's what drives people. And maybe maybe I would define, if, let's say, if we had to if someone postulated that free will existed, then I would probably define it as the mental structure arising from our self-identity that we've created based off of our foundations of what we hold to be like the universal truths, and these uh, universal truths that we believe in form foundation of our identity, from the structure of our thought processes, all these flow charts for how we trigger how what stimuli coming in, the flow charts for the mental trigger which interpret the stimuli and cause us to go certain decision making paths based off of these flowcharts, whether it's perceptual control theory, whether it's your instincts, whether it's honing your instincts, whether it's muscle memory, training yourself to be good at something, um, having a mindset, having a belief system, having a habit of doing something, just a skill at doing something. All these things are frameworks for our thought processes to have our train of thought directed um, towards a decision. And this is predictable when you try to understand someone. I, at least, instead of just psychologically projecting my emotions and ideals onto them, I try to model these frameworks. And so then you end up with people saying, "Don't read me so easily." It's, I was gonna say that. Uh, that's it's you took the words right out of my mouth. It's like you try to you try to understand someone on the level that they exist at, not the level that they act on, because we are all actors, whether we're aware of it or not. Got that quote from Sayuka. Anyways, you're never gonna spell it. It's a manga. Seiyu-Ka, or maybe that's the protagonist's name. No, wait, the protagonist's a girl. And Seiyu, no, I don't even know. But it's a nice quote. Oh my god, it's such a nice quote. Okay, our greatest vices. I'll start with broken society. We talked about that. Um, yeah, I talked about apathy. I talked about unaccountability. I talked about polarization, and I talked about, if we're skipping on the logic, our devotion towards causes can be subverted by people who are hungry for power, and then they climb up the ladder because people who are willing to sacrifice others can gain power more easily than people who take the virtuous path. That said, sacrificing others to obtain power is immoral and will never work in the long run, which is another reason why humanity is screwed. But people who take the virtuous path, they don't become martyrs. They just end up fighting a fight for 20, 30, 50 years. Sometimes they lose, usually they lose, and sometimes they get incremental change. And maybe after a couple of centuries, slavery will be abolished. Maybe after a couple of centuries, um, wars will end. Maybe after a couple of centuries, predation will end. Maybe after a couple of centuries, death will end, be cured. I see death as a genetic disease. When you see someone die, your reaction should be not, "Oh, that's sad. I pity them." Your reaction should be, "Fuck death! That's fucking absurd! And no one should have to die if they don't want to." So that's my reaction to death. Telomere shortening, that can be solved through biology and chemistry. Maybe a little bit of physics. Um, a lot. Well, those are like the three big sciences, because like everything else kind of like branches off, I feel. Anyways, never mind. I just offended a lot of scientists. But like chemistry, biology, physics, like you have to take those classes if you're gonna become a scientist, you have to take at least one of those three classes. Um, okay. So, probably math too, but that's not a science. Math is math. Math is like understanding logic and reality. And if people would just take logic courses, or if people would learn how to think logically instead of relying on unfounded assumptions, if people could test their own assumptions and reverse engineer their assumptions and think, I'm making an assumption, is it applicable or not? Can I make a better assumption if I have a more accurate understanding of reality? So, I forget what I was saying, but back to, oh yeah, death. So death can be cured with biology, or death can be cured with AI, uploading our consciousness into a computer simulation. So if I were not a hypocrite, then I'd go up to everybody I loved and cared for and say, you go into the cryogenic freezer until we discover a way to upload your brain into a computer simulation. If I'm not a hypocrite, then that's what I would do. Okay? So we will see if I'm an utter hypocrite. Or if I'm a defeatist. Like the defeatists who, oh yeah, I am a defeatist actually. Because I've already accepted the extinction of mankind in 2,000 years when the planet heats with runaway global warming and relative humidity skyrocketing off the charts after the 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere sets off the runaway global warming effect. And so humanity's, even if you stop the deforestation, even if you stop the salinification and the improper irrigation techniques and the expansion of the Sahara Desert, it's impossible. Deserts will expand now because the relative humidity and temperatures are positively correlated, and so they're both going to rise until, I don't know, when does it end? It just skyrockets up because relative humidity, the hotter it gets, the more humid it gets. That's a rule. And the more humid it gets, the hotter it gets because that's the greenhouse effect. I mean, yeah, that's the greenhouse effect because water vapor is a greenhouse gas, unfortunately. Clouds are a greenhouse gas. That's why clouds on Venus make Venus hotter than fucking Mercury. So I'm a defeatist because I've already resigned. I'm already resigned to the fate of humanity and all intelligent life on Earth. Except maybe a few survivors going extinct. So if one of those few survivors could be intelligent, artificial intelligence that has a consciousness, is self-aware, then I'd be happy. That's all I want. I also want sex, gaming, everybody to be vegan, and I mean, world peace. Um, oh, and to be immortal, and maybe love and sex. I think would go together. Maybe like an unconditional love. Yes, unconditional love from someone else directed towards me. That's what I want. Someone sexy, beautiful female, um, and eternally young. Oh, and like a naga. If they were like a naga or a mermaid, that would be even better with large E-cup breasts. So like, that's all I want. Uh, am I a parody of myself? Just, just wait 300 years. We'll see who has the waifu with E-cup breasts in virtual reality. So, so that just killed my dating prospects for today. Happy Valentine's, by the way. Um, so our greatest vices, I think, are predation, because animals are just like us. They have similar intelligence, similar emotions, similar devotion slash familial bonds, maternal bonds, paternal bonds. Just like a human baby loves its mother and vice versa, a cow calf loves its mother and vice versa. It's a beautiful thing, and we rip it apart, both physically and like limb by limb. And then there's war. Um, Most of my political videos are about war. I think you guys understand. I hate war. Um, it's not fate that people die in wars. War is all preventable, because humans have the ability to talk. We have thoughts we can convey through logic. We can have translators. We can have language. We can actually even translate our thoughts into language and then use that language to communicate others. And then those people translate the language into thoughts and can understand what we're thinking. There's a thought. We can also understand other people's emotions, other people's priorities, ideals, and we can reach compromises. So war is entirely preventable, entirely negotiable, and there's no justification for war at all. None. I don't consider profit a justification, because profit is just an agreement between two people or more that something holds value. Currency is a human invention. A Bitcoin is more tangible than 10,000, or divided by 20, 500? 500 $20 bills. One Bitcoin is more tangible than 500 $20 bills because it is more real, it is more secure, it exists. Those Okay, the paper exists too, but it doesn't have as much value because you could argue that it has the same value, but um, you can forge the $20 bill, but you can't forge a Bitcoin. Um, or an Ethereum or whatever, a Dogecoin. Um, I'm not trying to rant about crypto. I'm just saying um, it is more real because it has a mathematical basis that can't be like fraudulently imitated. So with even it's just a mathematical equation, but it has more value. It is more tangible than something of paper of the same value because the paper is dependent on the country's currency, whereas the crypto, um, okay, it's also dependent on the country's currency, but it's harder um, to like, what is it called? Forgery. It's harder to commit forgery with an equation that takes years to solve. Okay, third greatest vice, rape. Rape is bad, possibly addictive, regardless of what side you're on. And there's an interesting dynamic to rape, um, but it's also probably the most horrifying experience that most people can imagine going through. No, I guess I can't imagine going through. Um, it's the most horrifying experience that you will hear people going through because people don't tell stories when they're dead. So, rape victims can share their horrors, but victims of war you are not going to hear from because even if they're still alive, you're not. It's censored. You're not allowed to talk about war. Not in North America. Not in Britain. Not in America. Not even in Canada. Social media and television are both in the pockets of the deep state. being intelligence agencies and military industrial complex of America. So they don't it's not profitable to be anti-war. It's not profitable to have protesters saying we need world peace because I mean I've talked enough about war. I think people get the idea that murdering people is just really profitable if you can steal their stuff afterwards. Um, in it just there's so many ways to profit off of killing people you would not believe. So I don't want to say you would not believe. Like you already know, killing war is for profit. Like everybody knows. It's not like a lie. People don't try to hide it. It's like, oh, why are we going to war for profit? I mean, to save babies and children, except the ones we kill. So yeah, that's like everybody knows war's for profit. It's not even the most like patriotic, like fundamentalist, like I support this political affiliation. Like even the most polarized person knows. Yeah, war's for fucking profit. They know that. They might say, yeah, well, I mean, those people are bad though, so we should kill them. Like they might say that, but they know that, like, if there's a genocide, Army's not going to intervene unless it's for profit. Okay, next, I talked about death and broken society. I talked about that. So, humanity's greatest strengths are devotion, possessiveness, and logic. That's what I learned from anime. I guess I should talk about feminism now. Feminism to me is the strength of the female gender identity. Um, Feminism is an egalitarian approach towards gender identity. So um, people should not be slurring others on the basis of like inferiority with respect to gender. So if someone is male, there should not be misandrists hating on males. If someone is female, there should not be um, misogynists hating on females. And I mean, if you're a bisexual who thinks males are fucking hot and sexy and you crave to have sex with a male, then it's okay for you to sexualize women, and vice versa. Um, if you are a according to feminism, according to my definition of feminism, and um, if you are like extremely offensive towards women and you call women like really degrading slurs, then according to feminism, it's okay for you to call males really degrading offensive slurs based on their gender, based on their body parts. Okay? So, what I just said is obviously nonsense. Um, because I want to have a better definition of feminism than that. I want to have a definition of feminism where it's like, um, people are treated, uh, like, no. How do I want people to be treated? People are not treated, uh, like, contemptuously based on their gender. If it's okay to be contemptuous towards people, but the reason for that should not be their gender, right? So if someone's a war criminal or if someone pays people to kill animals for them, then like it's okay to make slurs against them. But if I'm going on about E cup breasts, then that is sexist of me. So I guess I don't make a good feminist at all. Um, but there's like a gender roles and gender identity is not just about um, gender conforming. It's also about trans, queer. Is queer an wait? Is queer an orientation or an identity? I forget what queer means. But gender is biological. Gender is self-defined, like self-identity, and gender is like neurochemical, like your chemical balances. And it's also genetic. Biological, like physical, genetic, chemical, and your self identity, mental. That's what gender is. So it doesn't just have to be male female. It doesn't just have to be a mix of male female along those four categories. You can also be submissive, dominant. You can be a follower, a leader. I You don't have to say those last ones are gender identities, but like they are gender roles. So the idea of how I would like to learn feminism is like all gender roles like are equal, or not equal, but should be treated equally, right? Because obviously if someone gets off on being treated as an inferior, um, then like their feelings should be valued as much as someone who gets off on being valued or being like controlling and dominant and like telling others what to do. Um, and that's where we need descriptive moral relativism. I hope that's the right kind. There's like three kinds of moral relativism. I'm talking about the one where you you look at other people and you say this is what they believe, and then you look at the other person and you say okay, this is what I believe, and then you try to reach a consensus based on like how much you value those two people. Um, and objective morality is where you value everyone the same, or you value everyone based on how much they exhibit whatever you define as consciousness. So people will have different models of objective morality. That's fine. Um, just like I have a different definition of consciousness than you may. Um, and so I think that's what feminism is valuing gender roles and gender identities. I mean, and like and how you like identify in relationship. How you like identify as a person, like your personality traits, and like your biological, chemical, mental self-identity, and your genetic gender. You still value someone's feelings the same regardless of what mix of those four things they have, whether they identify as a cluster of neurons, or a male, or a female, or a mix, and and whether they like to be submissive or dominant, or a leader or a follower. You still value their feelings the same as someone else. And then the exception being if they like meet your criteria for what is a person. So so maybe um like for a lot of people they would value their own gender as more of a person than like the other gender, or maybe I don't know. I think in society, both males and females value females as more of a person than males. Um, Females are kind of like given more like importance. People can relate to females better because they have sexy bodies sometimes. If you're an ugly female, then maybe you're treated as less valuable. But if you're like a beautiful, sexy belle, like a voluptuous woman with well beautified hair and nails and athletic limbs, then you're gonna be uh, valued as more of a person than um, a child or a pig, unless that pig is part of someone's family or that child is part of someone's family. And my approach with equating pigs to children is even if they have the same intelligence at a certain age, with a certain upbringing, respectively, um, if you wouldn't eat a child, then you shouldn't eat a pig. And if you don't want someone that is comparatively more conscious than you are, however you define consciousness, if you don't want them to eat you, then you shouldn't eat someone who is comparatively less conscious than you. So if you're twice as smart as a pig, then then you don't want someone who's twice as smart as you to eat you, then you shouldn't eat the pig, right? If you don't want someone who's 10,000 times as smart as you to eat you or your family members, then you shouldn't eat the ant, right? So that's how it works. You shouldn't kill a mosquito. But hey, that's just reality, and we are utility monsters. So there's always more practical ways to twist logic around the lies we believe in than to follow reality, because after all, we're just here to optimize our environment for our own physical and mental well-being. And but I hope that some of you might take some existential comfort in the survival of the human race or post-humanism via technological singularity and AI, like conscious AI. Or maybe you take some gratification in having an accurate model of reality, or sharing my model of reality, or just understanding what's out there. Um, my own worldview, for example. It would be nice if more people were um, it would be nice if more people extended their 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 personality and ideology to humanism, because I think if everybody had nihilism as a foundation for their core belief system, if for their core beliefs, then we could all be humanist, because we would understand that everybody is meaningless, and so our own derived meaning in life also applies to other existences other than ourselves. And so, if we don't like pain, we should try to reduce pain for others, especially when it's preventable. If we don't, if we like something, other people might like it too. And so I think that's a more harmonious way to live than fearing others' retribution when you do something wrong or go against the peer pressure. Um, because even if we're all utility monsters with no souls or free will, we're all on the same level. And I guess that's also a little feminist, if we're all on the same level. And if we can be objective about how we define what is alive, what is conscious, what is a person, then I think we can get past the absolutely. Anyways, I'll end the video here.